think of Albus Dumbledore, and you probably see the wise twinkling headmaster from Philosopher's Stone. Welcome to Hogwarts. But here's the thing, that twinkle, it has fingerprints. Every tiny smile in the later films covers a history of guilt, a history of trying to balance the scales for sins that never left him. We're going to tell the whole life, from that raw private tragedy with Ariana to the last quiet choices in Deathly Hallows Part 2. And watch how the past is not only background, but the engine behind every move he makes. Start at the softest place, the Dumbledore family home. The film flashes tell us pieces, but the books give us the wound. Ariana Dumbledore, a girl frightened into silence after a magical trauma, becomes the axis of everything. Imagine living with that secret. Imagine your brilliant, restless brother Aberforth saying later, and the movies hint at this, that everything changed after Ariana's death. Why does that matter? Because Dumbledore's later obsession with power, and then the opposite obsession with humility and protection, both come from watching power destroy the one person he loved most. Then there's the young Dumbledore everyone forgets, the version who meets Gellert Grindelwald and says things like, "for the greater good" in spirit, if not in those exact words. In Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Half-Blood Prince, the suggestion is clear, his ambition was real. Think about the line in Half-Blood Prince when memories surface, Dumbledore's youth was not a Boy Scout path. He was brilliant, hungry, and dangerously fascinated with changing the world, which is exactly why he fell for Grindelwald. Their friendship wasn't just romance or ideology. It was combustible. Two minds convinced they could break the world to remake it. And then the impossible, Ariana's death during that three-way duel between Albus, Aberforth, and Grindelwald. The films don't give a neat line to quote, but the ache is present, and it explains so much. Dumbledore never killed her. The truth is messier. He never knew which curse did it. That lack of certainty is the seed of his lifelong penance. Think about it. If you've ever carried a question that could never be answered, was it me? Every later moral judgment becomes an attempt to atone. He could not face public power anymore. He could only try to steer it with as much care as his guilt would allow. Fast forward to Philosopher's Stone. Dumbledore's twinkly line, "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live," lands differently when you imagine the haunted man behind it. Is it gentle wisdom? Yes, but it's also self-protection. A way to tell others not to make the same catastrophic errors. He's the man who has lived through a dream that cost him everything, so his jokes are warnings. Now watch Goblet of Fire, when Barty Crouch Jur bursts out of Moody and we get Dumbledore's fierce command. "Ministry of Magic, will you listen?" Or his raw push to protect Harry. There's a weight to it. He knows the cost of underestimating evil. He's been seduced by dangerous ideas once. Can you blame him for being strict, for gathering information, for holding back certain truths from Harry? Protecting Harry is not just strategic, it's personal. The boy who faces Voldemort is the same boy who reminds Dumbledore of loss and of the urgent need to stop another reign of terror. In Order of the Phoenix, we get a line that pierces, "You are not a bad person. You are a very good person who has bad days and bad years." Dumbledore says this to Harry, but listen, that's the man speaking to himself. The film gives us the grown man who hides his pain behind a bureaucratic calm when the Ministry invades Hogwarts. Remember his soft but steely "I must fight this war" energy when he silently deals cards and runs a resistance. He has learned painfully that secrecy and cunning are sometimes necessary, which is also why he withholds the whole truth about the prophecy. Harsh, yes, but think. If you believe that revealing a child's role would make them a target, would you risk their life to satisfy them? Dumbledore chooses the hard calculus. Half-Blood Prince is where guilt and strategy fuse. Watch the scene with the pensive memories. Each fragment is a ledger he is trying to balance. When Dumbledore says, "Do you want me to tell you my secret?" in a way to Harry, or when he confesses past mistakes through Sylvester. Okay, that's not a direct quote, but the film gives us his trembling honesty. The pivotal line, "I was in love with Grindelwald," appears explicitly in the extended canon. Whether or not the movies spell it, The emotional current is there, and it reframes everything. That admission is not a throwaway. It is the reason he spends his life trying to stop the precise ideology he once flirted with, dominance masked as liberation. Think about his recruitment of Snape, his strategic mentorship of Harry, his insistence on being the one to approach Horcruxes. Every secretive move is a man terrified of repeating the past. He's not aloof because he doesn't care. He's distant because he is trying to protect people from a version of himself that once wanted to seize power. When Dumbledore places Harry in harm's way at times, it's excruciatingly precise. He calculates risk and sacrifice the way a broken man tries to fix a wound he caused. And then there's the most painful choice. He's packed with Snape to die at Snape's hand. A staged murder in Half-Blood Prince that shields Draco's soul and cements Snape's cover. He knows death, manipulates it, and chooses it, not to escape, but to shape events so that fewer innocents are harmed later. He couldn't unmake Ariana, but he could orchestrate a way to lessen future heartbreak. The movie line, "Severus, please," said in Half-Blood Prince by Dumbledore when he begs Snape to be the one. That line is not about selfishness. It's a penitent man asking the only person he trusts with the cruelty of truth. The scene stings because Dumbledore is bargaining with mortality itself, deciding who should carry guilt next. That's the complexity. He never avoids responsibility by fleeing. He redistributes it. A man who knows that if he dies in the wrong way, the world will be worse off. Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2 fold all of this into the chase for Horcruxes and the reveal of the Deathly Hallows. The films give us Dumbledore's old trophies and his brother's angry face, and later, moments where Harry finally sees the man as he was, a young, ambitious visionary who thought rules could be bent for a greater end. When the film's memory of young Dumbledore says, "We will share all the discoveries, all the secrets," or when Grindelwald whispers seductions, we watch how temptation fell into tragedy. By the time Harry holds the Elder Wand, the elder Dumbledore's choices become a lesson. Power is a poison, and secrecy is sometimes the antidote, and sometimes the antidote, and sometimes the infection. And then this in Deathly Hallows Part 2, when Harry says around the final moments to Snape and to Dumbledore's memory, "You're the weak one, and you will never know love." Wait, that's not correct to film lines, but the confrontations in the film make you feel the weight of what Dumbledore missed and what he paid for. The truth comes out. He loved, he lost, he chose to live in ways that were often cruel but not without reason. The final reveal of his plan, that Harry must die and be resurrected, that some sacrifices were orchestrated, is monstrous to some and heroic to others. But remember why he thought this necessary. A man who had once convinced himself that the ends justify the means learned in the most brutal way, that means warp the soul. So his last gambits are attempts to minimize harm while accepting necessary pain. Throughout the films, Dumbledore's manner isn't inconsistent, it's layered. His jokes are clever, yes, but they're also precisely deployed lessons. His secrecy is not mere manipulation. It's a fortress built from the memory of Ariana and the catastrophe of his youth. When he tells Harry in Half-Blood Prince, "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love," he is telling Harry what he learned too late, that love and vulnerability are the counterweights to ambition. That line is the confession of a man who lived both sides. Why does that moment hit so hard? Because every film after his youth is Dumbledore dealing with the fallout. His fierce protection of Hogwarts and Harry, the way he squares his shoulders when confronting the wizarding world's corruption, the calculated withholding of facts, the final self-sacrificial posture, they all trace back to one terrible night and a period of ideology with Grindelwald. He lived long enough to see the damage power can do, and long enough to try to undo it, sometimes by stepping across moral lines he had sworn never to cross again. And here's the final, almost unbearable thing. Dumbledore never forgave himself. He sought redemption not through confession. He rarely made public amends, but through a lifetime of carefully directed decisions, manipulations, and protection. The man who tells Harry, after all this time, "Oh wait, that's another franchise's line." But when Dumbledore says, "Do what is right," Do what is easy. In his softer moments, he's speaking from the place of someone who tasted the easy road and saw what it did. The films let us catch glimpses, a look at the mirror of Ares, the way he refuses ultimate power, the way he quietly shepherds Harry to the truth at the end. So when you rewatch the franchise, watch Dumbledore like a map. Trace the small decisions, why he trusted Snape, why he lied about the prophecy, why he withheld the full story of the Hallows. Each is a line drawn from shame and a desire to protect others from his own mistakes. He is, in the truest sense, a man trying to pay back a debt he cannot fully settle. That's not to excuse every morally fraught action, but it's to understand them. Dumbledore's story is not simple. It's a cautionary arc. It tells us that brilliance plus ambition can blind you, that love can be both a revelation and a vulnerability, and that a single moment of loss can reroute a whole life. And the films, in their scattered lines and visual echoes, give us just enough to see it, a life shaped by one girl's silence, one friendship's seduction, and a lifetime spent trying to fix what once went irrevocably wrong. So the next time Dumbledore smiles and says, "Nitwit, blubber, oddman, tweak, yes," that whimsical line from Philosopher's Stone, hear it for what it is, a man who has tried to stitch humor over sorrow, who has learned how to make people feel safe even when he has not forgiven himself. That contradictory, complicated humanity is the real Dumbledore, the man whose past doesn't just inform his choices, it compels them. And if there's one last question to leave you with, what would you do with the knowledge of your worst mistake? Dumbledore answered by trying to control outcomes, to plan sacrifices, and to spend decades building a world where such mistakes might be less likely. That's not the end of the story. It's the reason he was the most dangerous and the most necessary man in the wizarding world, and why every choice he makes across the movies is simply his past, acting through him.